What is up, you guys? Hopefully everyone's having a great day. In the last video, I said I was going to talk about some pros and cons from the Philippines. We just got back from the Philippines not too long ago. I had my surgery, and so I'm recovering from that. On my left leg, we had a fasciotomy, and I've been sitting with this trip for a few days now, and we've been trying to figure out, how to talk about it because it was generally one of the most remarkable experience of my lifetime. We got to swim with sardines, we got to, snorkel with turtles, we stood under waterfalls, and we drank more coconut water than I ever thought was humanly possible. And honestly, at some point maybe we'll even retire there. I mean, it's just a beautiful country. But before I get into that, I want to give you a real talk. I want to, give you, particular stuff and things that I wish someone actually kind of told us more about before we booked the flight. I want to talk about the good, the surprising, and things that caught us completely off guard. Because the Philippines, it is an extraordinary country, and, it'll be a much better trip for you knowing what to expect. So let's get into it. So, the first thing I want to talk about, and this is probably the best news for you, is that $1 is roughly about 60 pesos. Let that sink in for a second, okay? The exchange rate means that almost everything, food, transportation, activities, accommodations, cost a fraction of what you would pay back home. And I'm not talking about a small difference. I'm talking about meals that would cost you between $20 and $30 in the US, in equivalent to like $2 or $3, over there. And your money goes really far. And, that changes your entire experience because you can stop stressing about, spending and just start living and enjoying the time that you have there. Now, on the second hand, I really want to talk and pay attention to this part because getting around the Philippines, especially if you're going to be island hopping and exploring multiple locations, this is going to require a little bit more planning. So, if you're going to be exploring the island seriously, the best option is to hire a private driver through your hotel. And, prices may vary. We paid as low as 3,500 pesos on the low end, and as high, the high end, we ended up paying around 6,500 pesos on the high end. In US dollars, that's roughly 60 to $110 for a full day for a private driver taking you wherever you want to go. But here's the thing, and I really want to be honest about this, not all drivers are created equally, right? Our higher end driver was 110% worth every single peso we paid him, and we even ended up tipping him more. Before we even left the hotel, we sat down with him. We walked him through our entire itinerary and told him exactly what I wanted to see and shoot. And he didn't just listen, he actually contributed. He gave us recommendations, things that aren't showing up on Google unless you really zoom into the map. And he suggested places that we never even heard of, places that ended up being some of probably the best moments of the whole trip. But on contrary to that, our low end driver was the complete opposite experience. When we sat down and we went through the itinerary, he kind of wanted to do his own thing, and certain places we had planned, he would push back on, saying things were too far, even though they were generally not out of the way, they were on the way. I think the farthest was the rice fields, and from the chocolate hills to where we were wanting to go was only like a 30-minute drive. And then from there, coming back to where we were staying was only like maybe 2 hours, if that. And so that was a little frustrating, seeing that things were too far, even though they generally were not. And so the lesson to take away, spend a little more money on the driver. The price difference is small, but the experience is completely different. Now, getting around when you are in your small towns, we utilized two methods. The first method was for getting around were the tuk-tuks. And, within a town or a city, the tuk-tuks are your best friends. They are everywhere. They're easy to see, and people will drive by, honk at you, look at you, and be like, they'll wave, and you'll either wave at them, and they'll flip a Yui, and they'll help you. But they are incredibly affordable. We paid anywhere from 50 pesos to 500 pesos, depending on the distance, and that is less than a US dollar, on the short end. For a ride in a vehicle that takes you, exactly where you want to go. They're also pretty generous and fun to ride. I enjoyed them even when it rained on us. It was a great time, and I loved the tuk-tuks. Another option is, and this is very important, if you are comfortable with it and you know how to drive, getting a moped, because then you're not limited to by traffic or retaining, one is great, that one option is greater than the other, but it gives you total freedom to explore your at your own pace, at your own time. Now, I do want to be real about the traffic. It looks chaotic, especially from the outside. It really doesn't. But once you are in it and you realize it and you actually, figure out the flow and understand how it works and how it has its own rhythm, it just takes time and minutes to trust the rhythm. And if you don't trust it yet, then stick with a tuk-tuk or stick with a driver, because these mopeds, they're going to be driving on the right side. They're going to, you're at a stoplight, you're going to have 20 plus people passing you on the right side, going to the very front, because that's just how they are. They're not going to be like in the US where they're going to, be lane splitting and driving through traffic. Generally, they drive pretty slow, which is really nice. The only time there's ever really traffic is if you're at a stoplight and there's issues, or you have people out guiding traffic. But for the most part, the mopeds, I did it 2 or 3 times while we were out there, and it was nice. It was nice to get around. It was nice to be able to do it. And it's nice to have that freedom. And if you have your motorcycle license, you can go and get, a really good motorcycle. And if it's above 400 cc's, you can take it on the tolls, and that even gives you more range of freedom, which is really nice. Now, I want to talk about this because it's generally caught me off guard in the best way possible. The Philippines is the island of happy people, and I don't mean that in like a cliche tourist kind of way. I mean it generally, in like specifically the Philippines. Everywhere we went, a lot of the places, the people were warm, open, and generally happy to have us there. And it wasn't like a performative, oh, hi, how are you? Like, they were genuinely happy. They loved the conversate, they loved the talk. And, they wanted something from us. They wanted us to spend money. They wanted us to meet them. We had a pizza joint that we stopped at, the best pizza I ever had. And they were just so kind and welcome. And that kind of experience, it's somewhere that I've never experienced something like that. And the energy is contagious. It changes how you move through a place. It makes you, more open, more curious, more willing to stop and talk to someone you've never normally approached. And it's one of those consensuously, pleasant and cultural experience that I ever had. And one of the things that I would like to say is that there's a difference between a tourist and a traveler. A tourist is someone who's going to go there and they're just going to look around. A traveler is someone who's going there and immersing themselves within the culture and being a part of it, mingling with people. We had great conversations with Philippines. We had great conversations with people who were from Russia and, different part of Asia is coming from Korea, China, and Japan, and so forth. If you're enjoying these videos, take a moment, please hit that like button, please subscribe. It really helps me out. It really helps this channel grow, and I greatly appreciate it. Okay, real talk time. Now, things that caught me off guard. The Philippines is still a developing country, and that means some things work differently than what most people think the U.S. are used to and what we're accustomed to. And none of these are a reason not to go, but I'm wanting to be realistic with you and, set that expectation so that way it will make your whole trip better. For starters, food and markets. If you're going to a local market to buy meat, it's probably likely to be raw, unpackaged meat sitting on an open table with them, having a stick with plastic, keeping the flies off and stuff like that. And as we know it in the U.S., that's not a thing here. Some are more developed areas where they are going to have packaged options, but majority of the local markets operate completely different than what we are used to and what we're accustomed to. Uh, with certain areas, you have to take malaria pills because you don't want to drink the water from the faucet because you can get sick. And so bottled water is the way to go. For restaurants, use your eyes. Look at the place before you sit down. Is it clean? Does it look hygienic? We tried all kinds of different places to eat and had great experience, but we were always making conscious and assessments and decisions before we committed. So you don't want to eat at a random shack in the middle of nowhere. Use common sense because you'll be completely fine. But if you're out, going through a small little town and you got a little guy grilling, some squid and stuff like that, probably wouldn't want to eat it because you don't want to get food poisoning and get, really sick. Now, this one kind of hit me, but it was the trash and the infrastructure. And this is just honest reality. Some areas are more developed than others, and you can see it clearly. Some places have organized trash systems, and some didn't. And, the dispensary between the different areas can be jarring, especially if you're not expecting it. And it's, what it is. It's not to be diminished the beauty of the country, but going in knowing that this is something you're going to see, and it kind of helps with the culture shock, and that change when you get there. The last thing I want to talk about, which was kind of annoying for us, but you have the vendor presence and the sellers. Everywhere we went near tourist areas, there were people, often children, selling bracelet and little trinkets and souvenirs, and they can spot a tourist a mile away. And they're very persistent and extremely persistent, but a firm, polite no is your best tool. Don't be rude. Now if they're starting to push you, you can talk to one of the locals and they can help you, and then they will get them to go away. Like we were in one of the towns exploring this very beautiful sculpture. Essentially, you walk around it and you got to see the history of the Philippines, and this girl was literally following us. And so we asked the guy, who was helping us, be like, hey, can you tell her to go away? Like, we're not going to buy anything. We don't need to buy anything, and we're good. And so he had a conversation with her, and then, she went away. And so, they're just trying to make a living. But that's okay. Just be clear and just keep moving. And some go, and the same goes for the homeless individuals, right? Who may approach you because they want you to buy food or whatever. It happens everywhere in the world. Handle it the same way you would at home, with empathy, but without feeling obligated. And for example, we were at in Manila at a pizza restaurant, and we're sitting here enjoying our food, and a homeless dude literally just comes in and is like, begging, hey, can you help us? And no, we're not, sorry. And even the other people are like, no, sorry. And then right after that, you have a little child coming in selling towels. And again, I get they're trying to make a living. Now, if you see a child with a towel, I do highly recommend buying a towel. And the reason why is the Philippines is very hot and humid. And so if they have like little towels that you can buy from them, I think they were like 20 or 30 pesos. They weren't expensive, but they're nice because you can fold them and wipe your forehead and your face to help with, the sweating and that whole ordeal. But again, you're not obligated to. So here's the thing about the Philippines that I keep coming back to. It's not a perfect destination. It is raw in some places, it is chaotic in others, and there are things that will surprise you and things that will test your patience. But it is one of the most alive places I have been to. We swam with sardines, we snorkeled with turtles. We stood under waterfalls, and did these some of these places didn't even look real. My next video, we're going to be showing a waterfall, and I still cannot fathom how real it was. And I mean, we sat there for, an hour just soaking it in because it was just so unreal to us. And we drank fresh coconut water straight from the shell more times than I could count. And we ate the coconut meat for breakfast. We watched sunrise over a, vast sea and, general beaches that could not be, places where you could not believe you were there. And somewhere between all of that, we started having a conversation that we're still having right now about what it would mean to retire there. The Philippines, it gets to you, and once it does, it doesn't let go. And if you're thinking about going, go. The flight is going to be your biggest challenge. Just go in paradise. Knowing your experience is going to be extravagant. Spend a little bit more on the driver, ride the tuk-tuks, eat smart, and be kind to everyone you meet, and let the place surprise you. It absolutely will. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe. And I will see you in the next one, where we're going to talk about one of the most amazing, beautiful waterfalls that I have ever been to. I will see you then, my friends.